Now large crowds were traveling with him, and he turned and said to them, Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple.
Now that sounds like a pretty dramatic statement. Okay, not only do you have to hate your father and your mother, your wife and your children and your brothers and your sisters, even your life itself. That's the only way you can be his disciple. Now, when we look at that, that does not make sense.
No, it doesn't.
Because Jesus, all of his teaching, all of his preaching, and all of his example was toward loving all of those people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he even talked about loving your enemies.
That's right.
As you love yourself.
Exactly.
So you got to say, well, okay, now then what does this mean? So, Jonathan, what does this mean?
Well, the word hate in the Greek is Strong's number 3404, and it means, by extension, to love less.
Okay. So
and there it is.
There's a degree thing going on there. Now the word can also be used to lay the whole thing out, meaning to detest.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has uses meaning to love less. The same word, and I didn't write the scriptures out here just because I didn't want to take the time. But there are a number of scriptures where that word is used, and is very obviously a degree thing rather than a detesting. And this is obviously a degree thing. So Jesus is saying that he is essentially saying, if you're going to be my disciple, and the word disciple here means a learner or a pupil, okay, if you're going to be my pupil, you have to put things in a different perspective than you would have had them. And I think that's an important place for us to start with Jesus giving us the sort of the defining of what true Christianity is. First, having been drawn by God, and second, putting things in perspective and loving the following of Jesus more than the rest of those other things. Mm-hmm. Okay? And again, folks, it's 860-442-6102. That's 442-6102. And for those of you who are listening online, just want to remind you that there is a slight delay. Can be anywhere from 5 seconds to I've gone in and out of programs listening up to a minute or so. So just keep that in mind when you're calling. You might jump ahead all of a sudden. But we'd welcome your call. Let's continue.
All right. Jesus also defines true Christianity in Matthew 16, verses 24 through 26. Then said Jesus unto his disciple, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited, if he shall gain the whole world, and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul?
All right, so far we're looking at this whole process, and Jesus talks about, again, being drawn by the Father, talks about a perspective thing, about loving him more. And now he says, if you're going to come after me, if you're going to follow me, if you're going to be my disciple, deny yourself, take up your cross, and then follow me. Okay, so the denying of yourself.
That's giving up your own will, your own purpose.
Well, and people just do that every day now, don't they? That's not an easy thing.
No.
And take up your cross.
Well, that's a picture, I think, of sacrifice, of following after Jesus, and he had a purpose, doing God's will, and we also have to follow that example.
Well, and also think about what the cross would have meant in those days.
Death.
Yeah, and a torturous one at that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was taking, like you're saying, it was a symbol of the giving up of your life, and it was not a pretty picture.
No.
There was no great glory attached with the quote cross unquote, especially in those days. So Jesus is not laying out a really fine picture here, is he?
No,
I mean,
not at all.
This is not one of those magnetic drawing statements that just draws flocks of people that say, "Oh, pick me! I want to deny myself and take up my cross." I mean, it just doesn't have that mass appeal, so to speak. All right, let's go a little further in Jesus defining what true Christianity is.
Well, Rick, let's turn to Mark chapter 12, verses 28 through 31. One of the scribes came near and heard them disputing with one another. And seeing that he answered them well, he asked him, Which commandment is the first of all? Jesus answered, The first is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, You shall love your neighbor as yourself. there is no other commandment greater than these.
All right, and so Jesus, in his dealing with the doctors of the law, of the Jewish law, is really expanding on and crystallizing the matters of the law to the things that he is saying are most important. And again, this is a matter of priority. It is loving God with, just feeling good about God in passing.
No.
Yeah, I kind of like God.
All your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and with all your strength.
So there is a total commitment involved in those four things.
Yes.
Okay, every part of you is supposed to be focused on this loving of God. And then he says, and you also shall love your neighbor as yourself. So he is really putting things, again, in a very, very clear perspective. What does it take? And he's summing up the law. And so when Jesus sums up the law and says, these are the things that are important, he's saying, this is what's important if you want to be a part of me. Okay, so I think that's an interesting perspective to say, okay, God must not only come first, but God must come first in a very big way. Next one.
John 4:31 through 34. Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, Rabbi, eat something. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you do not know about. So the disciples said to one another, surely no one has brought him something to eat. Jesus said to them, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to complete his work.
Now, again, talk about perspective and priorities. There you have it, Jesus giving us the example of perspective and priority by saying, it's more important for me to complete the work that God has given me to do than it is to eat. He's essentially saying, I don't care about food. What I care about is the will of God.
Right.
And so he's given us a perspective. And Vic, why don't we go into the break at this point? So, folks, as we end this first segment and get ready to begin the second, the question is, what does it take to be a real Christian? We've got to look at it from the perspective of how did Jesus describe what it takes?
This is Jonathan and Rick with Christian Questions on News Talk 102.3 FM, WXLM. Grab your Bibles. Don't go away. We'll be right back.